SSLFamilyDad with Simple Suburban Living, and today we're going to be going through just some of the things that I like to do to kind of prepare the home for the heating season or the winter months. So we're coming up on some cold days up here in Michigan, and these are just some of the things that I like to do every year just before we're starting to run the furnace on a regular basis. So this is going to be kind of a general overview of furnace maintenance, annual furnace maintenance, and heating system balancing. We're going to talk a little bit about the humidity and a humidifier in the system as well. So just kind of a general overview. This isn't going to be a specific repair or a professional clean and check video for a furnace. I may do that later on down the road, but furnaces vary so much from model to model and brand to brand that it's very hard to do a video that would apply to everyone once you get into the really fine details of a professional type clean and check. So we're going to keep this general so that it will hopefully more people can get something out of it. Some of the things that you're going to need to go through the process is a 1/4 inch nut runner or nut driver. This is pretty standard. It's better to have one with a longer handle on it, but this is the only one I could find. I couldn't find my good one. So a 1/4 inch nut driver is something that you'll need to have. It's also good to have a rag because we're just going to be cleaning out some dust and things like that, and a small vacuum. So any type of vacuum you want to use is fine. This is just a little shop vac that we have. It's also, this is something that I actually just threw together. They sell these. You can get a mirror that's on a retractable stick. This is handy when you're inspecting components that you can't see very well or looking behind things. This is especially handy if you're going to get into the more professional side of heating and cooling and inspecting the heat exchangers and things. We're not going to get into that today, but this is still something to come in handy. All I did to make this was, it's just a piece of 1/4 inch dowel, and this is actually my wife's makeup mirror, and basically this is just a couple sticks glued together, so nothing very very elaborate, but you can use this to kind of angle in and take a look at different things inside the furnace. So handy to have, not necessary, but handy to have. Some of the things that you need to purchase: if you have a humidifier on your system, you're going to need to buy a new pad for that. This is an April Air. There are other types of humidifiers. This is a pretty popular brand, so you may have something like this on your system. If you don't have a humidifier on your system, something that I highly recommend. It will make your home a lot more livable and comfortable in the wintertime, and it also helps actually reduce your heat bill, because the better the humidity is in your air in the wintertime in the home, the longer the heat will actually hold in your house. So it does make a difference if you keep the proper humidity in your home. So these normally have pads that have to be changed once per year, and so we're going to go through that process as well. Lastly, you have a furnace filter here. This is actually one of the cheaper, not very good ones. This just happens to be what's in my system, and I haven't gotten around to upgrading to a better one. These are really not very good. They do basic particle clean out, but if you want something that's really going to reduce allergens and pet dander and all that kind of stuff, pollen and stuff, you want to get a better filter system for your furnace, which you may already have, but this is just what I have. So you want to replace whatever kind of filter you have at least twice per year. These ones I recommend replacing 3 to 4 times a year, these cheap ones. The better ones, the air bears and the electronic ones, and there are a lot of other wider type filters, the 2 and 3 inch filters, those you can replace less and just follow the manufacturer's guidelines on those. So we'll go ahead and take you in close here and just kind of show you the insides of the furnace and what we're going to kind of look at and clean up in there, and just kind of do a general inspection, and then we'll move on to some other things. Okay, so before we get started inside the system, you just want to do a couple of safety checks here. You want to make sure that your electrical is turned off, so go ahead and hit that switch. Normally there's a switch right around your furnace that you can turn the electricity off. If you can't find it or don't have a switch on your furnace, make sure you turn off your breaker at the breaker panel. The other thing that I like to do as just an extra precaution, it's not necessary, but I always turn the gas, incoming gas off, whether you have propane or natural gas. Just go ahead and shut your gas valve off so that the valve is perpendicular to your pipe. That'll be off. And then you're safe to work in the system, just in case you bump something or you're taking things apart, moving things around. You don't want any gas leaking out before you put everything back together. So make sure those two things are taken care of, and we're ready to get inside. Okay, so what we're working with here is a standard forced air furnace. We're running on natural gas here. This would apply to a propane furnace as well. They're the same furnace, just with different gas valves and different orifices for the burners. Whether it's propane or natural gas, doesn't matter. But this is a standard forced air furnace. So if you have an oil system or oil furnace or a boiler or something like that, this is going to be a lot different. So most people have a forced air type furnaces, so that's what we're going through today. So just a couple things. I've taken the bottom door and the top door off, and a lot of components in here. This is a more modern furnace, so there's a lot of electronics, a lot of sensors, pressure switches, induced draft motor, and other things that you may or may not have, just depending on how old or how efficient your furnace is. This is a 90% plus efficiency furnace, so it has the PVC pipe vents and air intakes and all that good stuff. If you have a lower efficiency, like an 80%, then you might see some open burners in here. You might have a metal smokestack or exhaust stack that comes out and goes into your chimney or something like that. But the general stuff we're going to do today is similar for any of them. So on the bottom you've got your blower, which obviously blows air. If you're working with an older system, you want to check that motor for oil ports, and you want to oil that motor annually. Since that motor does run, if you have air conditioning, it runs year round, you want to at least oil that once a year. Most of the modern furnaces made in the last 15 years plus are sealed, and you don't have to worry about that. So you'll see an oil port on the actual blower motor down below here that you can add oil to. Moving up, and again, in this system there's a lot of electronics and things like that, but at the very top here we've got where the actual burners are, and this is a sealed system. But I'm going to take that apart here real quick, and we're just going to kind of do a quick inspection in here and just make sure that everything's looking okay. What we're looking for is obvious rust, any moisture. We can clean out some dust and cobwebs or anything like that in here. We want to look for anything that may be blocking airflow. This is not an old furnace. I think this one's less than 10 years old, so we really don't have too much to do in here, to be honest with you, but it's still a good idea to just take a look in here and check everything out. So that's what we're going to do. And this will pull off. Again, if you have a lower efficiency furnace, you may not have this exact type of thing. A lot of times the burners are going to be towards the bottom here. That's just a different style. So I'll bring you in close here and just kind of show you the burner assembly, talk a little bit about that, and we'll do a little bit of real quick cleanup. Okay, so here's our burner assembly, and you can't see this too well, but we have a thermocouple back here that's just going to sense the flame, and it tells the computer system that the burners are firing. That's over here on this side. And then way in the back here, in this case, we have what's called a hot surface igniter, which basically just glows red and lights the burners. You may have a pilot that will be a standing pilot light that will be in there a lot of times as well, and that obviously lights the burners. So so if we were going to do a more thorough or professional type clean and check, we would want to take this whole burner assembly out and probably wire brush the burners and actually inspect the heat exchanger, which is the holes in the very back there that the flames are blowing into. And again, that would be where our mirror would come in handy. But we can use the mirror to just kind of inspect the front of our burners. So we can kind of look up in here. I can see the thermocouple. I can see the front of our burners. Just kind of check it out, make sure that it's not rusted out real bad or anything crazy is going on with these. These ones aren't too bad, a little bit of rust on them, but nothing that I need to probably worry about this season. So if you're not comfortable taking the burners apart and really doing a thorough inspection on it, then you might want to have a professional come out and do a thorough cleaning on it at least every couple of years with a modern furnace. If you have an older furnace, that's something you want to do, even make sure you do every year. What can happen is the heat exchangers can actually get cracks in them, especially if you have an older unit, and you can leak carbon monoxide into your house. So it's something, if you have an older furnace, maybe 15 years plus, you want to make sure you have that inspected every year. So all we're going to do in here is just kind of vacuum this out a little bit, and everything looks fine in here. Again, this isn't a very old furnace, so everything looks pretty good. Okay, so as you can see there, I just kind of took the vacuum and I just went through and just kind of got all the cobwebs and dust out of the system here. There's really not a whole lot to do in this system because it is fairly new, and I'm not really digging into taking all the burners out and that, but what we're looking for when we're in here is just a general inspection. So look for any leaks. You might see water spots or something like that, frayed wires, you know, if you get mice or something or anything else in here. You just want to make sure that everything is clean, connected, dry, and that you don't see any obvious problems. If you just get in the habit of checking in here every year and just taking a look at things, you can really save yourself a lot of money. You're going to catch any problems early, any obvious things, and get those taken care of. There is condensation that takes place in the exhaust pipes and that, and the humidifier has water and drains and things like that, so you could get water leaks and other things happening. There's also, if you have air conditioning, there's a possibility that your tray could overflow and you could get water leaking down through your A coil and that in here, and you'll notice water spots underneath your blower, so you can catch those types of things. So it's a good habit to get into, to do a good visual inspection of your furnace over from top to bottom, make sure everything's looking good at least once a year. So all I'm going to do now is just kind of put our cover back on, make sure everything's tightened back up, and then I'm going to go ahead and put the doors back on and we'll move on. Alright, so next thing I'm going to do is just get some maintenance done on the humidifier here. So usually the front panel of these will pop off or unscrew in some fashion, and inside you've got some type of a pad, water panel, whatever you want to call it. Lots of different types out there, but this is a pretty common type. Water kind of flows over this, and over time you get a lot of hard water and other mineral buildup and things like that. This one here is practically falling apart because I haven't changed it in a while. So all we're going to do is just kind of clean this up, and this pops right out, and we'll go ahead and just get this panel changed out with a new one and just kind of clean up the inside of it a little bit. Okay, so I went ahead and put the new pad in here and snapped the water disbursement deal on the top and put everything back in. Everything looks good and flush. So the next thing I'm going to do is just set the humidistat at the top here, and this might be mounted somewhere else on yours, but the airflow in this case is coming in. This is my return air duct, so it's coming in and going down this way. And the humidistat has to be mounted before the humidifier, so the air is, you know, getting pulled into this and down. We don't want to measure the humidity just right after the humidistat. We want to measure the incoming air from the house. That tells us how much humidity we need to add. So we want to measure the house humidity air, not the air coming right out of the humidifier. So the humidistat should be mounted above it if it's in the return air duct. If your humidifier is in the supply air, then this should be mounted below it, or it should be mounted on the return. If that makes sense. So right now we're in the fall time, and we're average temperature, you know, up in the 40s, 50s, 60s. So I'm going to set our humidity a little bit higher. I'm going to set it at about 35 right here, and it actually is written on here anything above 20 degrees it should be set at about 35. Now I might come down and probably adjust this just one more time when it starts to get into December, January, February. It's a lot colder outside. I may move this down to the 20% mark or somewhere around there, maybe even down to 15. If you start getting condensation on your windows, again, that's you know, something that you need to adjust. So we'll leave it there for now, and I'll get this put back together here in just a moment. But the other thing I want to show you is most of the time you have this diverter here, and this diverts some of the supply air through the humidifier. This usually has a damper in it, and hopefully it's marked, but obviously in the winter time that needs to be open, so it's allowing the air to come through and bypass. In the summertime you don't need the humidifier, and so you want to close that off. So make sure that's set to open, and we're done here. Okay, so one more thing on the humidifier here I just wanted to show you. Once you get the new pad and everything put in, it's a good idea just to test it out, make sure that everything's working properly. And if you go up to your humidistat here, you can turn this until you'll hear it click, and there it is. And you can take a look in here for water. And so I don't know if you can see, but there is water starting to fill up in there, and so that tells me that it's working the way it should. And you can also clean this little tray out a little bit too. Take a wire brush in there or a rag, but it's probably okay. So if it gets too bad in there, you want to clean it up. So anyway, just want to test it out, make sure everything's working good, and it looks like it is. Okay, so I'm not going to say too much more about the air filters other than what I've already said. These are the cheap ones. They're not very good. These definitely need to be replaced 3 to 4 times a year, and they actually don't do a very good job of removing pollens and other allergens. So this is something that I'll probably take you guys along on a later video, upgrading this to a better filter, but for now this is what we have. So let's see how it looks. Pretty dusty and dirty, but not too bad. So these obviously do have an airflow direction on them. They're meant to be put in a certain way. So we're looking at the furnace here. This is our return air duct, and it's so the airflow is coming in, going into the furnace, and then up and out. And so that's the arrow we have on the furnace filter. So that's pretty much it for that. And I'll just show you a couple things that I like to do to balance the heating system out, make it run a little bit more efficiently around the house, and we'll wrap this up. Okay, so there's a couple things that you can do in the heating system to make it run a little bit more efficiently. And in our system here, we have the dampers that have already been put in. They were put in when I moved into this house. If they weren't in, I would have put them in. And so you'll see these little handles on all of these heat runs. These are 6-inch heat runs that go to various locations around the house. This one's the living room. This one here I think goes to the family room. We have some that go upstairs. They're all labeled. And we all have the trunk line here coming from the furnace, and you'll see we have some duct tape over these vents that come in directly into the basement. I put the duct tape over these vents for the cooling season because I don't want any of our cooling to go in the basement. I want to force all that cold air up to the upstairs. Cold air falls, hot air rises, whatever you want to say. So we want to push all that cold air up to the top floor of your home, which is generally the hottest floor, so that it cools the entire home down equally. In the wintertime, we can open these up, and we want to push a little bit more heat down in the basement. Now, we don't want to push all the heat down in the basement, obviously. That would be silly. But the heat does rise, and so if you heat the basement up, it generally heats the floor up above it, and it's going to heat up your upper levels. So I can just kind of balance this system out a little bit and change things around. So I didn't have anything going to the living room in the cooling season, but I might open that up just a little bit and force a little bit more air to the second or middle floor, and I'm going to force the least amount of air up to my top floor. And this one goes up to our upstairs bedroom, and so we're just going to taper that one off a little bit as well. So the idea is to force more air downstairs and less air to the top floor. The heat is eventually going to rise to the top floor of your home anyway, and heat the house overall. So if you're going to put these dampers in, you don't have them installed already, you want to put these dampers as close to the trunk line as possible. So you want to keep all of that velocity of air in the trunk line. And so the closer to the trunk line you can put the dampers, this one's actually even a little far away. I usually put it within 6 inches of this takeoff right here. This will actually help to keep that velocity of air in. You don't want the air to be pushed all the way down this pipe and then hit a damper. You're going to have leaks and stuff in all these seams, and you lose a lot of velocity there. So definitely something that you should consider doing if you don't already have dampers put in. Another thing that you can do to help the efficiency of your system, all of these seams where, like, we have a 90 elbow here and a straight piece of pipe coming together, there's a seam here. Generally these are not sealed, and so you can wrap some duct tape around those, and I've done a couple of them in different places where I saw some leaks, but all of these you can wrap some tape around. Duct tape, believe it or not, is kind of what it was for, duct tape. And you can cover up all these seams, so you can see how there's little cracks all around these. You're losing air all over the house. You know, you're not putting it where it needs to go, and so the more you seal up the system, the better it's going to run overall. So just some tips and tricks on kind of how to balance out your system for the heating season. Obviously in the cooling season you want to do the opposite. Like I said, you want to push more air to the upper floor and less air to the basement. So just as a side note here, I just wanted to kind of point this out. This is the bottom door of the furnace here, and you'll see it has a little sight glass in it. Most of your modern furnaces will have the, see if I can get out of the glare here, a circuit board inside that actually has trouble codes or error codes or whatever you want to call them. It will blink a certain pattern, whether it's running normally like it is now or whether you have a problem of some sort. So if your furnace is not running, first thing that you can check is come down and take a look and see if you've got some blinking lights. Take a look on the internet, and you can normally pull up the diagnosis for that. So it'll tell you what it is, whether you've got a pilot light that's not lighting, or a heat sensor that's out, or a limit, high limit or low limit that's tripped, or you know, they'll kind of explain that, and you can at least get started on troubleshooting. If it's something simple, you can solve yourself, and if it's something more complicated, you can call a professional. So it gives you some idea anyway. Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up. So we've just gone through some of the basic things that I like to do every year to kind of prepare our furnace and heating system for the winter time. We just went through a real general inspection on the furnace just to make sure there wasn't anything obviously wrong with it. Check for water, check for rodents, check for dust and dirt and rust and other types of things that could be blocking the system or clogging things up or making things not run properly. So just kind of a general overview inspection on it. We've also checked out the humidifier, made sure that was working properly, changed our filters, and did a little bit of balancing on the system just to kind of make things run as efficiently as possible. Make sure that you've got any cold rooms in the house you're pushing a little more heat to, and you can kind of balance that out throughout the winter time. If you don't have those dampers and those heat runs like I showed you, definitely recommend going and grabbing a few from Home Depot. Those ducts pop apart pretty easily. You can drill a hole in there and pop a damper in really, really quick. So it's not a huge deal, and it does help a lot with your heating system. So as I said, this was a real general overview. If you want a more detailed, a thorough inspection on your furnace, I would recommend having it professionally serviced. On a newer model like this, you probably don't have to do it every year. Every few years is probably fine. With an older system, you want to have that inspected more often. You want to make sure there's no cracks in that heat exchanger, make sure everything's running safely for your family. So that's definitely something that I would recommend. If you found this video informational at all, I really do appreciate a thumbs up. If you have any comments at all, any questions, anything that you want to add to the video, please throw those down below in the comment section. If you have questions, I'd love to answer any questions that you may have to the best of my ability. So you may have heard some water running in the background there. That's part of our aquaponics system that we have down here as well. And so if you're interested in any of that type of stuff, I'll throw a link over at the end of the video so you can check those out. So other than that, thanks for watching. Have a good one.